Hello everyone and greetings, it's Indigo, Indy Ray, and I am responding to some inspiration, and I want to create more content. So my video contents are probably going to be more laid back, broken down, casual at home, and kind of give you a glimpse of my inner life. So I have a series on YouTube where I discuss random topics about my life as an energy intuitor, as well as things that relate to my experience in spirituality and spiritual experience indirectly, such as, for example, my transgender experience. So that's something that's going to be up on YouTube, and I just want to create random little content. So I'm getting ready to meditate, and I wanted to talk a little bit about tarot cards. There's a lot of things you can do if you do tarot reading yourself, whether it's for yourself for fun or whatever, it doesn't matter. If it's your first deck, doesn't matter. One tip that I like to bring up to a lot of people, that I've heard people bring up to me as well, which is something I'm fond of, is sleeping with a tarot deck underneath your pillow, or cards underneath your pillow, especially when you first get them, to help you kind of adjust to them and their energy, and they adjust to you. So, and your energy. I still will do this. I can't remember. I do treat my decks differently. Like, I have my personal tarot cards at home, and I have one set that I use for my business. So I try to just use that for business only. Occasionally I'll pull them out at home, but it's really rare. I try to use very similar setup for those because I'm using them for business, and I want to attain the optimal experience for people who come to see me. That's like what I'm trying to offer, is an optimal, gaining of insight into the experience, from the experience into your personal life in the moment, past and future. So, present, all of the above. So, that's a little bit about me and tarot just in general, but I wanted to bring it up because I'm getting ready to do my morning meditation, and I decided to draw some cards. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. I'm a mess sometimes in my inner life, so don't repeat after me. And I did want to bring this up, so it's not like a don't do as I do, but do as I say kind of thing, even though it might sound like it. But I'll explain what I do. So I'm a Gemini, first and foremost, to kind of give you some background. Air sign, chaotic. My moon sign is air sign as well, Aquarius. And those Gemini and Aquarius are air signs, very mentally in my mind, in my space, headspace, and actually my rising is in Pisces, which is very much the same, airy, dreamy, more so than airy. It's more watery, it's more emotional, but it's very dreamy, heady, spacey. So all three of my signs are space astronauts. Aquarius can be actually one of the more grounded of the three signs, funnily enough, because they're fixed. But anyway, I am a big mess, more or less, especially at home, and I kind of do things as I go. I do this when I cook as well, or do create, like when I paint. I make a huge mess because I'm focused on, I don't worry about messes until later. That's how I deal with things. I'm very moment-based, so I kind of let things fall to the wayside, and I focus on what I'm doing. So if I make messes, I make messes, and they'll be there to clean up later. That's how I operate as an individual, and it's what I'm comfortable with, and I'm good at it. And arguably, I would say. And so I'm a little chaotic. So I also, being a Gemini, I like to explore many things. And having a moon Aquarians tend to like to explore things in depth. So I am kind of a little bit of both. I really like to survey everything that I'm interested in, and also kind of go in, maybe not fully, but as full as I can, until I'm like ready to move on to something else. So that's kind of a little bit about me. So consequently, I own, and I have had many tarot decks in my life, and I tend to move through them very quickly. Now that I'm in modern times, let's say today, present day, let's say from 10 years ago to today, at least, because from my observation, so I've only recently started observing readers on YouTube, so I'm not really sure how it compares to 10 years ago, but I assume things are a little different today. And what I'm noticing today is that a lot of readers online actually do tend to emulate one another, and I don't see anything wrong with that by any means. As a composer, I have taken inspiration from other composers often. I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm also seeing like they're buying multiple tarot decks and using them in readings online for a wide audience, very general audience, online, social media. I think it's really interesting. And it makes me feel like, oh, I'm not the only one who does this. I've known people that buy and use maybe 2 decks in a reading, but it's not something I've been exposed to a lot. In my exposure to tarot and mediums, it's generally, from what I've experienced from other readers and people, is they tend to be gravitating towards one deck for a period of time, or one method that's kind of consistent, or if they channel, they tend to channel one group of beings over and over more so than others, or something like that. They tend to have more assigned roles than I'm less fixed in my existence, and I am more mobile, which is very much me and relates to my past lives and it just my soul and everything. I'm very much, and I think it's really interesting that I named myself Indigo for various reasons. My nickname being Indy is what I go by, Indy Ray, and Indy, the way I spell it, but also just the sound, I spell it without the E, but otherwise it would be like the genre. So I spell my name I-N-D-I, short for indigo. But it really has a connotation for me, too, of meaning independent, being trans in a world that hates us, and wants to erase us, and standing proud and tall as much as I can. I'm independent in my choices, in my life, in romance. Like, I'm very different, and I would say independent and almost rogue. So, that's a bit about me. And I'm getting ready to sit and do my meditation. So I wanted to show you some things. So because I'm a mess, I have some decks that I don't use anymore. So what happens, and this is how I treat them, in my life, and especially in the last several years, I've been going through spiritual and life growth and human growth, personal growth, all of the above. Painful growth, emotional growth, mental growth, all of it. Trauma. I have experienced so many things, psychological growth, everything in the last several years. So especially earlier on in this last set of 5 years or so, I struggled a lot more and had experiences where I had to overcome things and deal with difficult challenges and things like that. So my life was even more of a mess for a while because I couldn't get to things. My mind was on too many things, and a lot of times I was withdrawing within myself and escaping, or space. I was in space, and also exploring my spirituality and everything else. So a lot of my physical things fell to the wayside, and it just had to be what it was, and I've dealt with it in the meantime, but don't mind me, I'm a crazy bedhead. But I'm saying all that to say, like, my life in the last several years, especially in the beginning of those several years ago, were really messy and like cluttered, filled, and chaotic. Not organized, right? Because I had no focus for that at the time. So it was common for my cards to be on the floor on my bed. Even still to this day, the ones that I use, I will leave them on my bed sometimes by my pillow, and I'll sleep with them next to me. So I don't mind that, but I try to keep them contained, and I'm trying to be better about it. I will admit I've not been good about taking care of my cards. So that is something I wanted to bring up to tarot people out there. Not that it really matters in the grand scheme of things, but it's like, do you want to take good care of a plant or a pet, or do you not want to? So those are things that we learn as humans as we go, like with raising a child. I mean, there's no perfect parent out there, so there's nothing wrong. We're all learning in this, right? So I just wanted to talk about how it can be more beneficial to be more organized with your cards, more careful as if they were a pet or a good friend of yours. Like, you would want to keep them, make sure they're comfortable, that you're spending time with them, that they're not all over the floor getting dirty. So I've done that a lot in my life. But the way I've dealt with that in the meantime, until I can address my issues, which I have in the meantime, was I addressed it until I could get to it, the way I did it was moving on. So I would just get new tarot decks. I'm like, well, if I've mistreated this deck enough, it kind of seems like time to move on. And if I've lost one because they've been on the floor or if they bent, so I'm like, okay, time to let this one go. And I'll tend to upcycle them, like I use them as bookmarks and things, and I'll keep the ones that I like. So I've got a few partial decks, mostly full or partial decks. Anyway, so one of those, because I've been cleaning and organizing things and I've been going through things. So one of those decks was on the floor because it fell from my bed when I was rearranging my room the other day, and I haven't gotten to them. So there were like 20 cards on the floor or something. So I saw some and I felt inspired to draw some for my meditation. So this is another thing I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about the card deck that I chose from that's on the floor. That's very interesting, that I haven't used in years. So it's a really interesting deck. And I wanted to talk about, I had an inspiration and a calling or urge or desire, if you will, to select a few cards from the pile, because some of them were upright, some of them weren't, because they've fallen on the floor. So I chose 3 cards that I just felt right. I drew one from the pile that I couldn't see. There were 2 upright, but I tried not to look at them, so I didn't really see what they were. I saw some colors. So I've got them here. I'm going to close my eyes because I'm going to show you the back. And some of them, oh wait, no, they're both backs, yay. So you can't see them. I've got the one that I drew, and then there's 2 facing it that were upright that I don't know what they are. So I have 3 cards here I'm going to leave while I meditate and see how they relate to my meditation. If anything happens in my meditation, I'm excited to see what happens. So I want to share this all with you and see what happens, because as a side note, I think these things are really interesting. To follow your impulses, follow your intuitions, especially when they're harmless like this, and test yourself and see, is there something here? Let's observe. I kind of like scientifically experiment, like, I don't know, maybe, let's see. Let's measure, let's try a couple things. So I've also done that in my past. I used to work at a deli for a short time, and we had to pull chicken for chicken salad we'd bake them in the oven, pull the chicken, shred it. Of course, they were whole chickens, so you have to take the bones out. And there would be quite a few bones. I mean, it was such a big deal because you can have a choking hazard that we would have to get manager approval to go through. They would have to inspect our chicken each time we shredded it for the chicken salad. And they have to sign off on it because it's very dangerous, right? The chicken salad is delicious. Anyway, so I would practice, and I was like, maybe let's see if I can determine myself if there are bones in here where they are, and then thoroughly go through it. So I used to do this in an example like that, test myself. And for me, I'm more comfortable scanning, as it were, as it's called, with my hand, but you don't have to do that by any means, but I've done it before. Actually, kind of in the beginning of my spiritual journey. One of the first books, I read a few books, and I was opened up to my spirituality a little bit, so I'd opened the door. And then I got another book really shortly into my progress. So this is like 2013, 2014. I selected a book, and I did this intuitively. I didn't even really think about it that much. I used my hand, and I went over these shelves, and I stopped somewhere. I was like, I'm going to stop here. This feels right. And wouldn't you know, it was a book called The Hathor Material, all about the Hathor goddess in Egypt and the beings who call themselves Hathors, who were called Hathor by Egyptians. Very interesting book by Tom Kenyon and I believe Judy Sion. I think one of them is a channel. I don't know. They work together, I believe. And anyway, Tom Kenyon is like the author of the book, and he has PhDs in like brain research and all this stuff. Fantastic, phenomenal. I think it's tomkenyon.net or com. I think that's it, tomkenyon.com or net. Very brilliant work, and man, not for the average person. Like, it's not something that everyone's going to pick up and try to study. He has very great resources of different kinds. Anyway, I selected that book and found it just by my hand and intuition, which was kind of startling to me, but not surprising to me at the same time in the moment. But it did take me several years after that to kind of develop trust in myself and continual use of things like this. So for me, it's more comfortable to use my hand whenever I'm scanning something I don't know. It helps me direct my feeling, and it helps me perceive, right? feel heat with your hands, you touch with your hands, you grab. If you think of the symbolism of hands, you can receive things in your hands. So that's for me, if I'm trying to do something that I'm having a difficulty determining what is there, using my hand can help. So I would do that with the chicken, and I would just close over it, maybe 2 rows, a big pan. I would do one, and then the second half, and I would stop in some places, and I would search for bones, and I would find them. Even sometimes, and sometimes there was one time at least that I would go over the same area, and I wouldn't find a bone, or I might find a tiny fragment, and then I would keep going and find another tiny fragment. So it'd be like even tiny, tiny, tiny bones I could pick up on. And it's not like I knew they were there, I was just testing my senses, and I'm like, I think maybe here. So that's a way to test yourself and grow your own developmental skills. So I'm going to do that for you, and so you can see an example of me implementing a similar technique with these cards to look at them after I'm done. And we'll see if they relate to me, my meditation, my current experiences. I'll obviously have to leave out personal details if they happen in my experience during my meditation, but I plan to share as much as possible to kind of give you a transparent view of what I do and how I learn and grow and develop. Stick around. Welcome back. Me. I'm talking to myself. I just finished meditating. Have some coffee. To finish up. Bring me back, snap back to reality. Okay, sorry for shaky. So I was going to show you my setup. I had this selenite tower that I got from my friend in the center of my lap to help focus energy. Spirals help focus energy outward. I'll be talking about that in just a minute with like the pyramid, Giza pyramid. You can focus energy through a point, and it can go outward through that point. And if you look at the focus of a triangle or pyramid, especially pyramid, with that, like if you think of a pyramid scheme, that big foundation, it wouldn't be anything without it. So this pyramid shape collects energy and can send it out. That's one function of a pyramid. I was discussing that momentarily. So, excuse me, that relates to the spiral shape, because that is the energetic shape of what the energy would look like as it goes out, more or less. Oh, there's another image I was getting, because I couldn't remember all the images. That was one of them I didn't take in my notes because I couldn't remember, but it just came up. In the beginning of the meditation I had, or somewhere, I don't know where, I can't remember. It came up to where I was seeing this image of, and I'll probably touch on it because now I think I remember when it was. I'll touch on that momentarily, but I saw this image before I forget of like cell towers and signals, and they were looking, and I could see them being spread across the globe like signals from towers, but not like we show with like the rings or the parenthesis looking. It was more like, it looked in my mind like firework lines, like if you would draw fireworks, and they were moving like flowers. It looked like flowers almost, but like 5 or 6 lines, like a boom firework, and they would just spread outward, like and kind of overlap and web in a beautiful geometric shape. So that's kind of what I was seeing as I was spreading energy throughout the planet. But first, before we get into what was going on in my meditation, I'm continuing with my setup. I decided to grab my business card. That was it was an inspiration, instinct, but I didn't even choose it. It was like dragging with me. So I was like, well, clearly you're coming with. So I put that down, and I put this on top of it. I can't remember, is this set in just rock? I don't remember, but it's, maybe it's prehnite. I can't remember, but there's azurite there. Which is helpful for meditation. I grabbed that, put that on there. I was like, it stuck out to my eye on my nightstand. I was like, that one. So anytime you're like trying to test your intuition or grow your abilities, just listen. I call it listening, but it's not literally listening, but it's very similar to the concept of listening. You have to be quiet and be still and listen. And the best way I can describe this in anyone's understanding is listening to what your body wants to eat rather than what your brain is telling you to eat. Which your body will tell your brain what to eat, but also your brain can pollute that. So can carcinogens, pollutions, and Well, I think the plastics are carcinogens, but there's plastics. The plastics, I don't know, there's something. They're not good, but they're plastics is what we call them. And we eat a lot of those and inhale a lot of things. So, what was I saying that for? So your brain, it can pollute the brain, and that can cause confusion and fogginess. It is possible. Fluoride in the water. I mean, these things are conspiracies, but they really do have grains of truth to them. I'm not condoning going away on conspiracy trains. I mean, like, this is the reason for this. I really want to refrain from that, but there can be grains of truth, like in the Bible. There are grains of truth in the Bible, but there's also problematic things that can be said about things that are in the Bible, and people can fight over them. So that's just an example of that. Now where to? So that's my setup. And I also had this selenite candle going, my votive tea candle. And I guess it's tea light, whatever they're called. Yeah. Oh, I had some Nag Champa incense going as well. So I set the mood, so to speak. And since on my social media page, my personal page, I invited people to join me in the meditation wherever they are, whether in actual meditating or thought or wishing blessings towards the cause that I'm doing in my meditation. So I've invited people along with this meditation I just did. So I'll go into like what I was doing. So I invited people and briefly explained what I was going to do, which was the intent of my meditation was to continue the healing for myself and for the planet and for humanity in particular. And also when I was inviting people to join me, it was inviting people, if they chose to so choose, add their energy to my energy in well-wishing for all beings to connect, understand one another, understand our differences, and still come together and love one another, more or less. So that was the intention of the meditation. I do my own spiritual work and meditation. However, since I was inviting a lot of energy in as well to join me, it was much more of a general, although I did use my general exercises and the guides that I was communicating with in the beginning of the meditation were like, go on, you can do your exercise now that we've had a little chat. So I've been doing that for myself, my personal healing, which I will probably get into details of in the future. I want to avoid copyright things, as well as I'm not sure if it's quite ready to be relayed, but I feel like it's going to be something good for me to teach. So I'll get more into that as that comes along. I'm new to it myself. It's not for everyone, and it's advanced techniques, which just means we all got to start somewhere, and there's no use in me broadcasting advanced techniques just yet. Okay, let's say that. So we're going to do that eventually. But so I was doing that myself through the meditation, and also for myself, but also since I was inviting collective energies and for the benefit of the whole, as well as myself and the planet, I was doing the exercise in more of a like directing, let's say, I was using the exercise the same way I do on my own, but I was directing the energy differently into different places, so to speak, directions, so to speak. So that was the process of my meditation. I began by clearing my mind, as I usually do. I hate those words. It doesn't really mean anything. All I did is just sit, and you just be, okay? You can have thoughts. It's totally fine. I had itches. I had things. That's totally normal. Don't worry about things if you meditate and you worry, like, am I doing things wrong? Should I be experiencing this? Should I be behaving in this way? Be behaving or reacting in this way? Relax, breathe. Everything is fine. In fact, that breathing example is what meditation is like. So just the way that breathing can be like, wow, that's much better. Just that kind of example is what you're looking for as you sit to meditate in the very beginning moments of meditation. So when I am saying clearing my mind, it's like, that's what I mean. Let's start a new segment here, as Abraham says, and focus my intent. So I began the meditation. I have notes on this. I don't know if I can access them while I'm recording the video. So actually, let me pause this and write them down. That way I can go through them. And I'll just list to you what I could recall upon reawakening from the meditation into reality. One moment. And we're back. Okay. So I've written down everything. So when I got out of meditation, I got on my phone because it was the nearest thing. Didn't have any pens or anything very close by. So I was like, I need to get this down. At least 2 or 3 times during the meditation, I was asking the angels and everyone to help me remember, because it's hard to remember some of these things. Like, if you're a channel or a tarot reader, you might know that already, probably. But channeling and doing tarot, it's so easy to forget what we're channeling. And I heard someone talking about this, another channel talking about this yesterday, actually. And it made a lot of sense how she was explaining it. But since we are channel and medium, basically, in order to understand our relationship between this and that, we are in between, right? More or less. And so you're bringing in things. So because you're opening yourself and bringing in things, like I'm just a channel, I'm just kind of like the vessel. So that's kind of why you don't remember, because it's like you're not really operating that much. You're kind of step back and letting things come in. So it's really easy to forget. It's very much like dreaming, how you forget dreams so easily. Even moments after you wake up and remember them, you can forget them in minutes, right? What are you doing? The door is open. Got one upset kitten who might come in, so you might hear him. He's a little spazzed out lately because he broke the house window the other day. And I've restricted his access to that window now. And I think he's a little upset about it, because he can't spy on Mrs. Stray Kitten outside. So that's where we're at. You might hear meowing. What I did when I got out of meditation was I wrote everything down so I'd remember it. So I asked several times during the meditation, please help me remember these markers, these symbols, so that we can discuss them. So I just wrote down things immediately as I got out of meditation. So they're a little not in order of what happened during the meditation, but I wanted to get them all out. So I wrote them all down in order, and I wrote down just what was needed so that we can expand upon it. So it's not like these are messages that I was given per se. Just think of it as more like it was energy and I was experiencing things. So it's possible I experienced thought in forms of language and words, but they're going to be more message-like and word-based in my notes, more so than they were experientially. And I'll expand upon that as we go through it. But I want to first, as I did when I got out of meditation, list what I experienced that came to memory after coming out of meditation. I recommend doing this for meditating, for dreaming, dream journaling. You want to wake up and write things immediately, write what you can remember. I do this for meditation a lot, and also channeling for years. And even still, I record my channeling sessions for myself. I'll voice record them or video record them, because you do forget. And so it's pretty wild. And I've gone back to listen to some from over the years and watch some, and it's like, whoa, I've forgotten all of that information. It's crazy. Like, that happened to me. What? So I recommend taking notes. I recommend my clients to take notes for channeling sessions especially, and for past life regressions, definitely. Because you're wanting to take note of what is grabbing your attention the most. And so you're going to try to focus on that, get it down so it doesn't go away entirely, and you have much, much harder time grasping back and like, what was that? So you want to do it as quickly as possible and leave a lot of detail out. Just do general words, and you'll see in my example how I do it. So I'll just go through everything as I wrote them down word for word. You might hear me say some notes about them, but you know what? I'm going to try my best to just not use any commentary. I'm going to read to you what I wrote and typed down upon coming out of meditation, word for word. So a lot of it is not going to make sense to you. Some of it might sound like narcissism, or things that you don't understand, or what is that, flamboyance, or like growing something larger than it needs to be, aggrandizement. So I want to say it in French so bad. I almost said it the French way. So can you hear that cat? I'm telling you, it's the stray. He's freaking out about the stray. Anyway, he loves her, but he, like, anytime I open the door, he, like, wants to attack her. But it seems like they're in love, but whatever. That's not the purpose of this video. It's distracting, kitten. So then we'll go into, then I'll just explain my meditation in full detail. And then we will, let me see if I can set my phone down so I can maybe not be so shaky. Okay. Casual recording with Indie Ray. Who needs to edit? Why edit a world that isn't perfect? You know what I mean? Why? If it's not perfect anyway, it's supposed to be what it is. Great. So, we'll go on now. Let me read to you exactly word for word in order as I jotted down. Fabric. Matrix. Bring matrix in me. Bring energy through matrix in me. Trees. Angels. Seraphine. Seraphine. I always see it in the French way, so I've written it down in this French form. Seraphine. Which is like the same thing, I guess. Seraphine is the name of one specific angel. I said I wasn't going to comment until later. Okay, continuing on what I wrote down. Angels. Seraphine. Seraphim. It's all energy. Answer the phone. You have to call up here. And it rings, and we answer, hello. Cinnamon bark. Like the spreading energy through pyramid tip. Sense spread awareness of energy. Cinnamon oil. Redwood trees. Magnus, that's the name of my pet snake. Magnus colors and lines and 7 dots revelation. Kundalini reference. Those go together. And I'll explain all these in a moment. It's so exciting. Hopefully you learn from this. I think it's fun. Continuing. E.T. friends. Actually, I had written in my phone alien friends, but I prefer E.T. But for speed and just getting to the point, I said alien for discrepancy. Just wanted to be honest. E.T. friends and energetic being friends reunion. Watch me go dive in and do this, I said. Some feared for me, but knew I was meant to do this. I have more notes that I'll get into on that momentarily. Knew I was meant to do this, and are happy to see me reawaken, and it will help signal the marker that all are ascending. Large audience, separate note. Large audience. Scoping out to see entire multiverse. Where we are, and you can be here too, because it's all here. Sun energy, earth core energy, pyramid channeled out. So that's what I typed. So I will comment on my notes and also consequently be talking about the experience itself during the meditation. And then we'll look at the cards together and see what they say and how, if they relate. Okay, so let me go through this. Fabric and matrix. That was towards the end of the meditation. So the first thing, let's maybe try to go in order of the meditation. The first thing I noticed was angels. Presence of angels. So that was the first thing. I wrote that somewhere. Let's get these in order here. So the first thing that came to my attention was angels. I was aware of the presence of maybe all the angels, but there's a lot. And so right before I sat to meditate, I made a post on my personal Facebook inviting people to join me if they wanted to in the energy. So I could feel people around me before I started to meditate. I can't really tell you if they were living humans. I could just feel energy coming to me. So, and as I started to meditate, I was aware of the angels. And so that could have been part of it before I really initially started the meditation itself. I was picking up on the presence of things. Could have been humans, who I invited to focus with me. I was picking up on energy. So that happened right before I started the meditation. So I was like, okay, I need to get to this because everyone's here and we're ready. And so I started it. And I noticed angels, the presence of angels first. Then I started bringing my attention to Seraphine, who is an angel that that came to me for someone's tarot reading a few years ago. And I believe just wanted to make themselves known to them as a guide. So I don't really know anything about Seraphine. Recently, I've been introduced to Seraphinite, and it's been significant to me and interesting. I love it. It's a beautiful stone. And it's significant to me because of this experience I've had meeting an entity that called themselves Seraphine to me. So Seraphinite is taken from the word seraphim, which has to do with a specific range, hierarchy, if you will, existence, species almost, if you want to say, of angels. And in some, I don't remember, what is it, Jewish mythology? There's some mythology. Anyway, they're known as the highest hierarchy of angels, so to speak. So the most pure, the most divine, the most close to God, let's say, which is purity, love, no judgment, no shame, no hate, things of that nature. So pure vibration. So there's some of the highest vibration entities, supposedly, that you can encounter or read about in mythology. So I don't know much about her. I was kind of getting the impression in the meditation that she is kind of, let's say, a spokesperson for the group of seraphim, angels. Let me cross these off as I go, because I don't know where I'm going to go next. So that's that. I believe the next thing that happened was, because we had a few exchanges, there was something, I think that all happened later. That happens later. At some point, I did feel the presence of the redwood trees. That's why I wrote that down. No messages, just aware of the presence. Well, maybe they were giving me messages, but I'm not sure. Maybe some of these came from the redwoods. Because I kind of want to talk about that later, because that kind of relates to later things. Large audience that I had written down refers to the presence of energy and beings that were joining me in this meditation. Especially as I started the meditation, I could really tell. And they became more known to me as I was in meditation. A lot of, like, angels, energy beings. That's why I wrote down that one. ET friends and energetic being friends. So there's many things that I picked up on at first. Specific entities I'll get to later that I was referencing with the word friends. Did that happen beforehand? No, I think I did my exercise. So we had our exchange with the angels, and me and Seraphine had a little bit of interaction. And there was something else. It was the thing I forgot that I mentioned in the video that I didn't write down. What was it? See, this is why I write things down. Anyway, I think that what I brought up in the video that I forgot to write down that I've already said by now to you as an audience, that came up, I believe, during the Seraphine interaction around that time. So that was initial. Then she's like, go ahead and do your exercise now. This is like, we're not really here so much for messages. You just do your thing. We're here to watch you and support you and watch you learn and help you learn, right? So I'm like, okay, so let's get into this. So that's a couple minutes go by. Then I actually start doing my energy process work for myself, but I'm doing it this time more directed for myself and the public. So I'm channeling energy through me from the skies and heavens divine down through me. Also, I do this for myself daily too. And I start with the energy from the earth, and I picture Gaia, the spirit, what she looks like to me, and I picture the earth, and I picture that coming up to me. Usually, almost like roots, but it's more for me, I visualize it more like fertility, growth, verdure, greenage, like bushes and like leaves, like green leaves, so like almost like vines. So I will connect to the earth that way. I also try to connect to the stars or heavens or the God energy, so to speak, if you will, universe. So I bring those two, breathing in, bring the energy, bring them to me. Connected, rooted, grounded, all of the above. I do that, and then I'm bringing in energy also because of the specific intention of this meditation outwardly. So I start to collect it within myself first, have these interactions with Seraphine and some things, and then it's like, okay, now start the specific exercise. Okay, so then I really start to direct the energy. So then I'm bringing it in and doing my exercise work, which I might get into in the future of what that entails, which is specific visualization tools. So, and then sometimes in addition to vines, like I'll visualize snakes coming up from the core of the earth into my spine, because the energy work that I do involves the use of a visualization tool of snakes, and they have meaning for that reason. Interestingly enough, I had a realization about my pet snake and Kundalini. So, I'll get into that soon. So, I was doing that energy work, activating all my 7 chakras, bringing energy through them from my pelvic center, all of the above, which I'll get into in the future. And because these are mysticism, they're mystic school practices. These are practices that have been practiced for thousands, if not longer, thousands, like tens of thousands of years on this planet by humans, using symbology, symbolism, and visualization techniques to create a transformation effect through the use of imagery. So these practices are very old, so that's why I don't want to like reveal all of what I'm doing yet until I do it more long-term, stable. But I've been doing it for a while. But I really want I don't know. It's advanced, so I don't want to talk too much about it because it could be too much for some people, or like people might misunderstand it, not be ready for it. Things like that. So I was doing that, and that's kind of when things started happening. But first I directed it, brought it in with me. Then I was directing it all back to the earth. So I was bringing in, and then I expanded it not just to myself, but bringing in all the earth energy up through me. So because I'm getting ready to channel it all with the specific intent. So not just energy, but like for the well-being, healing, coming together, understanding, connectedness, awareness. What is that? Coming into oneself. Is that the phrase I'm thinking of? Coming into something. So that whole inclusivity feeling. So I was bringing all that with the earth, picturing the earth energy, adding to that, so it's coming up from the earth, all the earth. And then I'm bringing in energy from the heavens, which I'm visualizing through the sunlight. So divine energy being literally brought to us through sunlight. So that's the way that I connected those two, bringing everything in, breathing it into my energy field, and then directing it back through my root to the earth to be expanded into the roots of the earth, the entire earth, the energy, the well-wishing, the blessings that we are all doing that I invited others to do, including ET beings and energetic beings, which I collectively invited them to as before I was doing all this. So we all did it together, and I asked for help with that. That's important. I asked for help multiple times, especially from my specific spirit guides, to help me contain and invite this energy and direct it in a very specific, intentful way. So I asked for a lot of help because it was a big project, right? More than myself, so I really needed help. So as I did that, I also connected to the pyramid. So interestingly, because I'm connected to the pyramid myself, and many of you are as well. That's not like it's my thing. That's not what I mean. But it's a very big, important piece for me in my memory and personhood and soul. So I use the pyramid often, the ethereal, energetic blueprint of the pyramid, which I might get in. I don't know if I can get into. It's like meditating, maybe we'll get into that because I think I wrote some things like that. So I use the energy visualizing the pyramid to do things sometimes with myself and others, usually with just myself. I'll visualize meditating inside the pyramid and echoing resonance, because that's what it was used for, primarily for humans. The Giza, at the time of its creation, more or less, when it was newer, so to speak, because it's been around a while too. It was around for a while before it was used. Let's just say the time that the pyramid was used for spiritual transformation was really heightened and concentrated later. So it was maybe 10,000 years old at this point, where it's really being used a lot. It was created around 32,000 BC-ish. So we're talking 35,000 years ago. That's about the time frame that they arrived, so to speak, and we're there. So, but they really started to become used for human purposes, in particular spiritual energetic transformation, like energy work or meditation that I'm talking about now. They were used for that using sound resonance. So you could take individuals into different areas of chambers that still exist today. They were different chambers, and you could work on different like chakras of the body, for example. That's generally how we would do it, and that's kind of one of, hopefully I don't step on toes, but that was one of my roles in that lifetime there, a long time ago. So I was helping the predecessors of humans. So this is even like, from our understanding, it's pre-human, but they are also human. They were also human, but not like you would understand. More like Neanderthal. I don't want to say that, but it's like they were less spiritually developed, and their species themselves were... Sorry, the species itself was... I got interrupted by my phone. The human species at the time was physically still developing differently, so it would have looked very different from our frame of reference. It would have... We don't understand it. The closest thing I can say to you is Neanderthal, but please don't attach to that too much, because that's not exactly all of it either. There's a lot of connotations with Neanderthal. Just because someone is a Neanderthal or less evolved, let's say, doesn't mean they're not intelligent, okay? So let's just say that. And so there were groups of these individuals, right, at the time, who were fleeing and or traveling around the globe, trying to find better places to live, to survive, etc. And maybe some of them were picking up on energy and like, oh, we gotta go, because the continents and things were shifting really a lot for thousands and thousands of years around that time. So we had that great flood that we know about, was just about 10-ish thousand years ago, 10,000 or so years ago from today. So it was about 88 something BC from my knowledge. Of course, there are multiple timelines, and this can really be a little fluid itself, but more or less 88 something BC, around the time the big final flood happened, to where sinking of Atlantis as we know it, final changes. But for thousands of years prior to that, there was a lot of migration. There were a lot of issues for thousands of years in the areas known as Atlantis, which were actually very large, like a continent, and many cities. So there's a lot of things. But a lot of them got involved in energy work that you could look at as like nuclear energy that became very destructive. So they started using this energy in a very destructive way, which happened slowly throughout time, but eventually led to the ultimate demise of 65-70% of the planet, right? Had to reshuffle. So that happened around 10,000 years ago. Okay, the Great Flood. Now, the Great Flood in the Bible is referencing, in my opinion, that specific flood. There was a lot of change happening over the times, so that's not the only flood that has occurred, despite what the Bible says. That's just the last one, and it was probably mentioned and called the Great Flood because it was maybe not the biggest cataclysm, but it was the final one, and it was like, it would seem from the outside perspective to be the time of most change. But this change had been occurring for a long time. I just want to say that. So while the planet is shifting, it's very habitable during these thousands of years. But you might have to migrate to better areas of chance of survival. You might find disagreements with your community members about the way they're using energy in Atlantis, for example, and be like, you know what? I don't agree with this, I'm leaving, and I feel called to go to this area, which became known later in our days as Egypt. So this is what's happening around this time, 10,000 years ago. The pyramids were used about 5 to 10,000 years before that. So we're talking the height of the use of the pyramid hold on, let me make sure I'm getting this right, because now I'm confusing myself. Yes, so that's what I'm trying to say. The use of the pyramid and the height of the use was actually pre-flood by thousands of years. So all of our records, which are post-flood, have to do with mainly pharaohs. Not all pharaohs are good, not all pharaohs are bad. They're all humans, for the most part. They were all human. They were born with human DNA. Some of them had mixed DNA. Wrong name. What's his name? Amun-Ra? Akhenaten. He was the one that brought everyone under the one collective, which was heretical at the time. But they were getting out of hand with the multiple gods sort of thing. That's not really what was getting out of hand. It wasn't that there was too many gods that they were believing in. That's not really the problem. They were losing a sense of oneness. So that's when Akhenaten came to help reunite people around Egypt and the beliefs. However, throughout all of this time too, even though from the flood to now it's been very violent around the pyramid, they started to take over the pyramid and use them as royal chambers. So the knowledge and the use of the pyramids as energy transformers and emitters to fuel the city of Egypt, ancient Egypt, I should say, stopped. They no longer knew how to do that. It was taken away from them, more or less. Something happened like that. There's that piece missing off the tip, right, of the pyramid, and the limestone covering is mostly gone. So it can't be used. So it was prevented from being used for further planetary destruction, because you could use it for that, whether on this planet or another, because it's got quite a bit of power, baby. So, I mean, it powered the whole city of ancient Egypt, which was large, my friend. It was like the height of spiritual humanity, height of humanity evolution, which we all know today, even in our education, was ancient Egypt. Excuse me, I have to rest.